This month, we're gonna do a little deeper spotlight on compliance, because compliance is something that rears its head more and more frequently. And the honest truth is that compliance is tightening across the entire country. Sorry, compliance is tightening up, and compliance applies to you if you are, whether you think it does or not. Compliance is going to apply to you. And so what I want to do today is just talk about some of the key principles of compliance, and the things you want to think about, as well as some of the key deadlines and dates that you want to look at as well. Because there are some dates coming up that are going to be really important. And if you miss them, then the chances are you're going to be affected. Your business is going to be affected in its ability to communicate with your customers, your sellers, your buyers, or whoever it is you talk to. So there are three things I wanted to touch on tonight. And the three things are the trust center and stir shaken. That's the first thing. The second thing is A2P 10DLC, which is all about text messages. And the third thing is about DNC and consent. Those are the three sort of areas I want to touch on tonight. So the first is the trust center and stir shaken. So one of the things that compliance is trying to do, and as the different compliance structures continue to evolve in the United States, it's really about identifying the companies that are working with voice and text messages, identifying them, making sure you know who they are, the government and as well as the carriers, and making sure that they're acting within the compliance kind of areas, right? So making sure they are acting in good faith and abiding by the rules. So the first, the trust center and stir shaken really go hand in hand, because once you complete your trust profile, stir shaken is automatically applied. And I'll take each of them step by step. So first of all, in order to make sure that the carriers in the United States, as well as the FCC and everybody involved, knows who you are, and to make sure that you are acting in good faith, you have to register inside our trust center. Now, our trust center is only available to you if you are the smartphone account holder. So you got to make sure, if you don't see the trust center in your account, but you're the business owner, you want to reach out to support and make sure you get them to give you access, because you need to be the account owner in smartphone, the person who's responsible for the smartphone account, in order to take these steps. And the trust center is a very, very very simple and streamlined sort of process to get registered. You'll simply create a profile inside the trust center, and you're going to submit it for verification. And that basically means you're going to say details about your company in terms of the company name, the EIN number, your registered address, your website address, and who your authorized representatives are. And that's going to be submitted inside of our system, so that it can be verified by a third party, and that give that the stamp of, yes, this is actually an entity, and we have verified the details. It's very simple to do. I will say, though, there can be a backlog in terms of its processing. So if you have not yet done it, get in there now, and complete the process and get that verification underway, because, of course, as you can imagine, the deadlines that are happening right now on compliance apply to every carrier and every system across the United States. So that means everyone's having to do it. And now that the deadlines are coming up to kind of the sharper end, everyone's piling in now and doing it. And that means that you've got a potential of having delays. So please get on that right away. The first step of this is registering and getting an approved profile. You're essentially saying, this is who our company is, these are our details, and the third party verifies that and comes back. Now, you may have certain bits of problems verifying if you don't, for instance, have a website that you can give people. If you don't have your own website and contact details against that website, you may need to work with our support team to get certain documents to the compliance center for verification. But that's something that our support team are used to doing. They can help you directly inside the chat inside a smartphone, and they will work as quickly as they can to help you get verified inside the trust center. The good news is that once you get this first step done, being verified inside the trust center, which is essentially you putting your hand up and saying, this is who we are, we immediately apply stir shaken, which is the second part of that first area I want to discuss tonight. And stir shaken is all about verified voice calling. And it's essentially a way of you identifying all of your phone numbers so that when you call someone, our system knows who you are. And we reach out and we say, this is who this person is. They are verified. Let's give this call a good rating so that there can be a higher likelihood of it being connected and less likelihood of it being spam likely, and as well as an attestation, a way of verifying the call as being the most trusted type of call so that carriers will connect you as quickly as possible and with the best connection. So what the stir shaken is not something, once you've got a verified profile, it's going to be applied automatically for you. It's applied to all of your phone numbers. And then from a voice point of view, you are compliant. You are working within the stir shaken framework and you are fine. You can continue to make voice calls. So it's a very easy one-step process of getting the trust center open and getting a profile done. Once that's done, stir shaken will be applied and your voice calls will then be under the stir shaken banner, and you will have the best possible chance of having a high attestation of the call, but essentially the carriers knowing that this is you and it's a verified number calling. So that's the first bit of compliance that I want to talk about tonight. And it's really important you get this done. And if you haven't got the Trust Center profile activated, I'm going to show you where that is on my screen right now, just for those of you who've never done it. I'm just going to share my screen just so that it's very, very clear. Can everybody see my screen? Ellen, you can see my screen? So I am the owner of this account, and you can see here, we've got this little shield on the bottom left-hand corner on the menu called Trust Center. And if you click on that, you will see that in my Trust Center, I have an approved business profile. And that means that my stir shaken, which is that trusted voice element, is activated and is working in my account. So that's that step one. And it is really as simple as coming down here and starting the process. You fill in a form with all your details and you submit it. So that's step one I want to talk about. The second part of compliance I wanted to talk about tonight, because the deadline is actually coming up even more for this one, is around text messaging and A2P 10DLC. For those of you who have never heard this term, although I'd be very surprised at this point if you haven't heard this term, essentially inside the United States, the carriers in the United States all got together and decided to create a protocol, A2P 10DLC, where they can, which stands for application to person 10-digit long code. All that really matters is you're sending text messages to people using an online platform like a smartphone, and you're using a local number to do it, right? So local area code, local number, and you are using an online system to send texts to consumers. That is where this all kind of comes in. And to be honest, for most of our customers, they are sending text messages to sellers, buyers, and customers, and people they're trying to warm up, customers they've already got for customer relationships, etc. They're sending text messages all the time. It applies to you if you're sending text messages inside of smartphone. The key is, and this is the biggest thing, A2P 10DLC is something that quite honestly has been evolving over the last probably 2.5, 3 years. But we are now to the point where the carriers, 3 years in, the carriers have decided that they are now going to start enforcing the rules to such an extent that if you are not registered, they will block your text messages from going out. So if text messaging people is a part of your sales cycle, relationship cycle inside your business, and you do it with an online system like smartphone, you need to take this seriously, because as of July, I think it's July 5th, they're going to start to throttle people who are not registered. And by the end of August, they're saying they're going to cut traffic that is unregistered, that is not registered. So you've got a very small window comparatively. This has been open for about 1.5 years, 2 years. now we're coming to the end of it, where if you are not registered and you do not have your text messages going through this, you're going to have your text messages fail. Now, the good news again is ultimately this is a positive step, because just like with Stir Shaken, and it means that you as a legitimate business can put your hand up and say, hey, this is who we are, and we're calling you for a legitimate reason. The same is true with A2P 10DLC. And this is your chance as a business to put your hand up and say, I want to communicate with my customers. And these are the phone numbers I'm going to be using to do so. And this is the type of communication via text message I'm going to do. That goes inside a campaign. It gets sent into the same third party structure. It gets verified. And once it's approved, you are able to continue to send text messages under the A2P 10DLC framework. And even better, you're going to have, they're going to be text messages that are known. They know who you are, your business, the numbers. And so they're able to say, this is actually legitimate. It gives you a higher amount of text messages you can send per day, because again, you've verified yourself and you've put your hand up to say who you are and the numbers you're texting. And it gives you the opportunity to make sure that your text messages, your numbers are continued to be seen as legitimate, because a lot of what we're doing in the compliance space is cutting down against the bad players, right? The people who are simply spamming people, who are ignoring all the rules and are sort of ruining it for everybody else, as well as the consumer. All of these are really designed to mitigate against that. A2P 10DLC, as I said, you have got to the end of August before unregistered traffic is stopped, is what they're saying. So right now, as of today, it's the 27th of June. If you do not have an A2P profile and then a registered A2P campaign, you've essentially got 2 months to get this completed. And they've already said in July, they're going to start throttling. So the truth of the matter is, in 3 weeks' time, if you're not registered and you don't have a campaign, you may start to see your text messages fail. And all that the carriers will say is, sorry, you don't have an A2P 10DLC profile and campaign. There's no support we can give you. There's nothing we can do about it other than get you to register. Now, that sounds really doomsday-ish. And quite honestly, it's not doomsday-ish, but it is urgent. And this has been something that has been spoken about, and we've sort of tried to get the word out and encourage people to do for over 2 years at this point, I think. Now is the time where you have to do it. Now, we also have, and I'm sure that maybe Ellen or Kyle can drop a link in the chat. We've got a huge help center that gives you all the information you want to know. It's in our documentation. For those of you, I'll just quickly share my screen again. For those of you who've never used our documentation center, just up here at the top of the screen, you've got the help icon, and you can see documentation. And inside the documentation center, we have got an enormous amount of help across every part of smartphone, including security and compliance. And inside there, you can find out almost everything you could ever want to know about Stir Shaken, the Trust Center, DNC management, caller ID management, A2P 10DLC, etc. So again, I would really encourage you to take a look through there if you want to learn more. Now, the final bit I just want to talk about tonight are 2 other parts of compliance. So the truth of the matter is that if you are a business and you are a legitimate business that wants to continue to grow and interact with your customers, you've got to take compliance seriously, and you've got to learn the basics of what compliance means for your business. And 2 areas that I don't see people focused on enough, and I just want to highlight them tonight, are adherence to DNC protocols and checking DNC, the do not call registry, and genuine opt-ins that can be verified for receiving text messages, right? Those are the 2 areas I just want to touch on tonight, because they are crucially important. And we see this all the time where people do not have that. If they are found to be breaking compliance rules, they essentially have a period of time which they can fix that. And after that, the carriers and potentially the FCC and certainly our downstream carriers will shut people down from communicating, right? So it's really important that you take very minimal steps to make sure you're within the compliance framework. Now, do not call is a really important one. The do not call registry is something that is very simple to deal with, because ultimately, number one, if you are in a business where you're buying lists, potentially you're gathering customers in a way like that, you can very easily use our for instance, our Smart Leads beta tool, which is inside our platform, and you can upload that list into smartphone, and you can do a DNC scrub, right? So you can essentially, when you upload it, it will check all those numbers to see if they're on the DNC list, and it will mark them so you can't call them. That's really good, right? Because if they're on the DNC list and you call them and they report you to the FCC, that's bad. That is, you are that, that is a bad thing, and that's not something you want. You need to respect the DNC, the do not call registry. So it's a very simple thing. We give you the tools. You simply go to the Smart Leads, you upload your list, and you choose to DNC scrub them. You can also DNC scrub them in almost any data platform you would buy leads from. Most of them will provide some element of DNC scrub and known litigator scrubbing that I highly recommend you do every single time you start to call a list. Because just because you've scrubbed a list once and you decide to recycle that list 3 months, 4 months down the line, scrub it before you call it again. Because in that time, you may have had 10, 20 people on your list of 100,000 subscribe to the DNC list, right? So it's just a really good habit to simply, before you start calling a new list or an old list, run it through the DNC scrub. It's a cost-effective tool to do, but it'll give you the first level of compliance that you need, making sure you do not call anyone on the DNC, the do not call registry. Now, the second part is, of course, you have a very easy way of adding people to our DNC, your DNC list inside a smartphone. If you are in contact with someone and they give you explicit instructions to stop calling them, put them on the do not call list. It's very simple to do. You can do it from the mobile apps. You can do it inside of Smart Dialer. You can do it inside of smartphone. You can do it everywhere you need to be able to do it. But if you have a process and a very strict adherence to that inside your company of simply putting people clicking on do not call, it means that you're going to put them in the DNC list inside a smartphone. We will not allow you to call them. We will not allow you to text them. And you will be able to comply with their wishes, which of course is an important part of DNC compliance. Now, you are able to get people to subscribe back to you. So it's not like someone can't come back to you and say, actually, I do want to speak to you again. And they are able to activate it again. Of course they are. But it's just a really important thing that if someone expresses a desire for you not to contact them, simply put them on the DNC list, the list inside a smartphone, and you can do it in any of our dialers. The second and final bit I'm going to just talk about in terms of the compliance, and then I'll open up for questions, is opt-ins. Now, I have seen people for the last 15 years play fast and loose with opt-ins. Yeah, of course I got opt-in. Of course I've got opt-in. The truth of the matter is, the compliance noose is tightening on that as well. If people start to complain about getting messages from you or calls, and for text messages in particular, if you can't demonstrate that you have a verified and verifiable opt-in, that they have actively opted in, not passively, not, they didn't read that little fine print and they just, went ahead, but actively opted in, then you will be asked to change that behavior to get verified opt-in in the future. And there may be other compliance issues that come to you depending on the volumes and what you've been doing in behavior. It's super easy. If you've got a form people are filling in, then on your website, make sure they actively have to mark that they want to receive text messages from you, that they actively have to mark yes, click yes, whatever it is. And that you are then able, when you capture the information on that form, you are able to stamp all of that in your database of whatever it is, so that you can, if questioned, show them the form, the FCC or the carriers. You can show them the forms, you can show them your process. And then, and I've seen this, if you can demonstrate good process, they will allow you to continue. Honestly, like I see this every week in compliance. Someone will come to us with a compliance issue. If we can demonstrate that our customers have actually done it correctly, they go back and they say, okay, no problem, continue. Or if we can demonstrate that our customer has listened and changed their behavior to be compliant, again, they're reasonable and they will allow you to continue. Where they will become unreasonable is if you just ignore it. And that is, underlying about all this is compliance is not something to be ignored. And I've watched people ignore it for 5 or 6 years. And the truth of the matter is, compliance does not cost you much. It does not take a lot of time. It actually, it's good for your business. It's good for your brand. It's good for everybody. And it's something that as the legislation keeps tightening, the rules keep tightening. And at this point, it's in your interest to take the next month and a half and just make sure you tick off those basic compliance checkboxes. Now, the good news is if you've got any questions about this, please head over to that documentation center that I talked about. Go to smartphone, go to help, go to documentation. There's loads of information there. It's really very simple steps you have to take, but they're crucial ones.